Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Babes in Bookland. I'm your host, Alex Franca, and today I'm discussing Striptease by Kate Flannery with my friend Kate. But before we get into the episode, I wanted to share another great review from Apple Podcasts. This one's by Blonde Babe 1989. Babes in Bookland is a hidden gem in the big world of podcasts. It's what all of us women need, an insight convo about a great female-led book. The bonus episodes, movies, are a full little treat too. Love the way the host Alex steers the conversation/context. Both fun and interesting. Thanks, Blonde Babe. That's what I aim to do here. Keep things fun and interesting. And we have a really interesting episode today, so let's get to it. Hi, Kate.
Hi.
Thank you so much for being here with me today.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here.
Kate, talking about Kate. I love it. I honestly
I
didn't
know.
even plan that, really.
I was actually thinking when I talk about it, I'm like, maybe we should all just make it really clear. I am not the author.
Oh my, what a situation she found herself in.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts on the book?
It was kind of like looking back in a little mirror at myself in my early 20s. I mean, obviously on a much smaller scale, but like I did kind of identify with her and some of that just inability to set your own boundaries when you don't even know what they are yet. You know, you're so young, you're fresh to LA, and you don't have any idea who you are yet. So it can be really hard to, know where to set your boundaries.
Yeah, and I think in Kate's case, she thought she had such a clear idea of who she was and what she stood for. And she
Hmm.
realized just how easily, when it comes to being tested on those things, that we can be manipulated.
Totally. Yeah. Especially with like the right person, this Dove Charney seemed like he was this very narcissistic, and sometimes those personality types can be so magnetic. It's like they just
Hmm.
draw people in. And yeah, you do have to have a really strong sense of who you are to resist it.
Exactly. I thought that this was such a well-written book. It almost read like a piece of literary fiction to me as opposed to a memoir. It was so relatable also because when I came to LA, I was young and I really connected to that idea of navigating who you want to be with who you think you are.
Hmm.
I also was very taken in by these American Apparel billboards all over the place. I thought that these women, these girls, seemed so confident in themselves and their sexuality, and that seemed really powerful to me because that was something that I hadn't found within myself yet. They were seductive in a way that I just wasn't even comfortable attempting at that point in my life, but in the end there was just so much manipulation and misogyny ingrained in this story.
Yeah, it was actually really disappointing because I felt sort of how you did. They were, a lot of them, real girls. They didn't look necessarily like the Victoria's Secret model of the time. Not that they weren't beautiful, they were all very beautiful, but they were real. And I know I really appreciated that and kind of connected to that. And so then to learn about everything that was going on behind the scenes was a little disheartening.
Yeah, it was icky. It was icky.
Hmm.
Okay, well, let's just dive into it. This book was published in 2023, and this is her dedication for my sister. So I like to start each episode off with just some quick topics. Okay, so you talked a little bit about American Apparel and how you loved that these girls or young women seemed so fresh and real and relatable. And I completely agreed. Now, we both shopped at American Apparel as well. What did you
Yeah.
feel about the line itself, the fashion?
So that was actually something that drew me in probably the most. For me, the fashion there was like perfect because they sold a lot of smaller sizes. And I was a smaller woman at the time, girl, woman. I had a very small chest, which was great for their clothing because it was just like very fitted. And, you'd see their models like wearing no bra. And I loved to wear no bra.
Mhm.
So it was like all right up my alley. So I do remember going into the stores and being like a little intimidated because even the shop, the what do you call it?
Shop girls,
The shop
the
girls.
retail workers.
Yes, the shop girls would wear very revealing clothing. And then there were all these kind of sexualized pictures on the walls. And so I feel like I shopped there for the clothes in spite of some of that atmosphere.
Do you feel like you were trying to fit that mold? Like for me, I struggled with the confidence in my sexuality because I always felt like such a little girl that to me, it was almost like trying on somebody else's confidence when I shopped
Yes.
at that place.
Totally, 100%. I think up until that time, the only images of like women in lingerie, for example, that were sexualized were like Victoria's Secret models, where they were like big boobs, major curves. And that just wasn't me. Like I was flat chested, slim, you know?
Yeah.
And so to see women in like the American Apparel ads who looked like me but were sexualized, it kind of gave me the sense of like, oh, like I could fit that. That could be, where I find my sexuality. So,
Yeah, I can be sexy even though I don't look like Heidi Klum.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, and I think that is a really important feeling for young people, really everyone to
Mhm.
have. I hope we all feel sexy, at least in various points in our life, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Maybe not every day, like right now as I'm like
Yeah.
lounging in my tank top and sweatpants.
Yeah.
Although at this point in my life, I do feel so much more comfortable in my body. But you're right,
Yeah.
it's that weird transition where you're young, people are starting to maybe notice you or like not notice or notice things that you don't have or that it feels like you're quote unquote missing.
Mhm.
It was refreshing to see these girls just unabashedly being themselves, even though they
Yeah.
didn't look Hollywood perfect.
Right. And they were, I mean, if I think back about the images, some of them were very hypersexualized and almost like voyeuristic, where you feel like the image has been taken with a hidden camera, like almost against her will or without her knowledge, which apparently
Ye-
kind of was happening.
Yeah, exactly.
But I don't know. I don't think I took all of that in. To me, it was just about like the girl with the body that looked like mine that was being promoted in a positive sexual way. And I was like, oh, okay. Like I can identify with that.
Of course, we didn't stop to think, "Oh, these images of this girl, like, did she explicitly give permission for them to be used?"
Mm-hmm.
Because we
Mm-hmm.
just assumed that's
Right.
what happens in marketing and advertising. You
Right.
get
That it
paid.
was art.
Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
somebody got paid to do it, and obviously we didn't know what was really going on. Okay, so the last kind of quick topic, it's a very quick topics today because the book is just so juicy and full of goodness. We talked about our transition from high school out to LA. Kate is graduating. She graduates Bryn Mawr and she eventually ends up in Los Angeles. So, what was the transition from college to real life? As I like to call it, my freshman year of life. Do you remember what I called it? Freshman year, sophomore year, junior year, and senior year of life? It's
Yes,
kind of like it's
totally.
kind of like the fourth trimester when you have your baby.
It is. It really is. Yeah. Oh gosh. Well, I feel like my transition from college into that like first year of life was somewhat smoothed out by the fact that I went from interning at a company to then working at that company. So it all just kind of blended together. Like it wasn't a hugely jarring transition for me. It was when I eventually left that company and then had no idea what I wanted to do or where I was going to go next that it definitely was much more challenging. But
Well, so what did you do when you had this moment? You've had quite a few different career changes because I know
mhm, mhm.
you started at USC in the theater program with me and then switched to music. Then you had your first job in the music industry and then you
Right.
decided this isn't for me.
Yeah.
How did you make that next step?
I floundered for a while.
Every good girl
Let's
flounders
see.
every once
What did
in a
I
while.
do? I briefly went back to acting and like kind of tried to get an agent for a while. I worked in a restaurant late at night, like till 2 in the morning. I mean, just did like a typical waiting job while you're trying to pursue acting. And then very quickly, I would say within another 6 months, I was like, no, 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 this isn't it either. And then I got a couple jobs at like social media web design companies.
That's right. I forgot you did graphic design
I
for a
know.
while.
I've had all the jobs. I'm sorry. I was taking them all these years. And that was okay, but it's still just I totally identified with what she was talking about at Urban Outfitters, how she describes, we all see as the consumer Urban Outfitters being this super glamorous company, but then on the inside, the reality is it's a corporation and it's dry and dull. And that was my experience 100%. Even doing these jobs where the music industry, where you would think it would be this really glamorous, exciting job, the actual work is still work. And it's sometimes very dry and, sitting at a computer processing invoices and,
Yeah.
ugh.
Mm.
eventually found my way into speech pathology because I had my son, and that kind of got me interested in like language development, child language development. And so once I found out about the field, it was a clear fit. I knew that it was what I wanted to do and took it from there.
I just remember coming over to your apartment and I was so in awe of you because you had gotten married, you had your child. I still felt very much like a kid myself. And I remember you studying to go back to school
Oh
and
gosh.
get this new credential, this
Yeah.
degree. I think you kick ass, Kate. I'm so proud of you. And,
Oh,
you figured it out and now you're
yeah.
living this amazing life.
Yeah, it definitely was not for the faint of heart. That was thinking back to when my son was an infant, just having to study while he's like in the stroller, pushing him all around the stroller on walks so that I could listen to lectures on my headphones. Like,
You do what you got
uh,
to do, right?
you find a way to get it done though.
Yeah, yeah. And you did. You did. I hope that you do look back and feel accomplished and feel proud of yourself for all of the things that you tried to build a happy life.
I do. I definitely do.
Good.
And I definitely feel very privileged too that along the way I had all the support that I needed, you know?
Yeah. Well, let's dive deeper into Kate Flannery's journey. As you mentioned, she worked at Urban Outfitters right after graduating from Bryn Mawr. She lands a copyright job there. But like you said, it's not the cool, hip job that she imagined. She actually calls it a morally corrupt corporate wasteland. So there's that. Uh,
Oh my gosh.
she hears California calling and she moves to LA where she could just feel the exciting future waiting for her at one point in our lives.
Mhm, mhm.
She's scrounging around for some freelance writing jobs and she's growing desperate and lonely. She starts the memoir with this anecdote about being in the Glendale Galleria. I was like, I know that place.
That was when she hooked me. Like what does she call it? She calls it the mall for the proletariat class or something like that. And I was like, that is the perfect description. That is it.
Okay, so does
Uh,
Kate narrate her audiobook?
yes, she narrates it herself. It's lovely. I loved getting to hear it all in her voice. I do feel like it added a little something special.
So she's at the Glendale Galleria, a place that we both know well, and she's approached by this young blonde woman who wants to talk to her about Mother God. And Kate wonders what it is about her, Kate, that drew this girl to her. She writes, was my new girl naivete that obvious? A vulnerability that shot from me like light off a mirror. I felt weak and exposed, like all my confidence had leaked out. I wasn't fooling anyone. One thing was for sure, I was going to have to be more careful on my own, but I couldn't let something like this happen again. I was lonely, but not lonely enough for the mother god, which I have never heard of Mother God. Have you?
Yeah, no, nope. I
That
have not
cult
been
never made
approached
its
on that
way
one.
to
It didn't
us.
make it. No. Mm-mm.
Okay, so she's like, all right, I am going to go through LA in defense mode, right? I'm going to be aware of the people trying to draw me in. And then she's at a bar one night and notices a group of women about her age at a table dressed really cool, quote, the same clean, classic athleisure wear, having a really good time. One of them notices her, waves her over, introduces herself as Ivy, and hands her a flimsy business card that reads American Apparel, a progressive, provocative retailer and manufacturer of knit t-shirts, not dominated by logos or politically correct tribalism, sweatshop free, great travel opportunities. On the back side, it says, join our team. Kate's immediate reaction is awesome. But when Ivy suggests that Kate model for them, Kate deflates. She writes, quote, I was too smart to fall into that sexist trap after 4 years at Bryn Mawr. I was a brain, not a beauty. Plus, she's like, I need an actual job with, 401k and benefits. She tells Ivy, I'm not a model. I'm a feminist. And Ivy responds, you can be both. This isn't just a modeling job. We do it all. Okay, Kate. So, model, feminist, can you be both?
Gosh. I mean, I think you probably can. I think you can have those values for yourself and choose to pursue modeling. I just think you're going to be up against like constant attacks against those values and
Yeah.
like constantly having them challenged. So, it might not be like the easiest career path if that's who you believe you are.
For me, the question that I kept coming back to over and over as I read this book was what is sexual empowerment and what is sexual
Hmm.
exploitation?
Right.
And I think that's a really fine line in the sand.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get into that more as we talk further about Kate, all the stuff that she has to deal with working at American Apparel.
Yeah.
Ivy tells Kate all about their boss, Dove, who was committed to making a better life for all of his employees, how he isn't trying to cheat anyone, and how he believes in ethical capitalism. And Kate's like, ethical capitalism? Can this be real?
And you could say that, maybe he was paying like all the factory workers, as a whole, the company as a whole, it was made in America. And so maybe he felt he was paying all of these people a living wage. But then you look at, she's making 10.50 an hour, having this event, what goes on to eventually be like a job with extreme responsibility. I mean, traveling multiple cities, opening new stores, hiring entire staffs for 10.50 an hour. I mean, I know eventually it goes up to what, $30,000 a year. It's like nothing.
Right. Well, and then she stops making overtime. So it actually was kind of like a demotion for
Right.
her.
Right.
Dove knew exactly what he was doing. He was selling a lot of young women on this idea.
Mhm.
And behind the scenes, he was manipulating them. If there really isn't another word for it.
And taking huge financial advantage. I mean, thinking about all those women who were on the ad campaigns who got nothing for it apparently other than 10.50 an hour.
Yeah, well, were they even being paid when the campaigns are being shot like at Dove's house?
Doesn't sound like it.
Our girl, Kate, she starts working for American Apparel. She
Yeah.
arrives for the interview and she's really taken in by the Millennial pink factory, the large banner atop that read, American Apparel is an industrial revolution. And the message is echoed in Spanish along the east side of the building. I have been to the factory. I remember going to one of I guess it would be like a sample sale.
My husband still has several t-shirts from American Apparel bought, during that era that have held up amazingly well. I mean, he has a lot of clothes, so he doesn't like wear them every single day, but the fact that a t-shirt has held up for 10 plus years is pretty impressive.
Yeah, I agree. So, as Kate waits for Ivy to give her the tour, she notices a series of Polaroid shots on the wall of a blonde girl in sweatpants and a red triangle bikini top playing on a playground at night. Kate writes, I knew this girl because I was this girl, or at least I had been recently. There was something so honest about the shots, just a real life girl going about the business of girlhood, not really modeling. And yes, I think they had a lot of that. It did start getting more and more sexual,
Mhm.
but there was also just a lot of girls like smiling and seeming free in these billboards,
Right. It was as if you were just getting like a window into a real girl's life, just like she says, in the business of doing life, just
living life amazingly too, happily.
yeah. Yeah.
Ivy takes her on the tour. She says racial and cultural diversity fueled the creative nucleus of this brand. There were no old white guys in button downs. The majority of the employees were young women. Product development, design, marketing, and manufacturing were all housed under the factory's roof. That just seems like a great business practice to me personally.
Yeah.
They make their way to the manufacturing floor, and this is where Kate is introduced to Dove. She writes, he was wearing a tight white terry cloth polo and matching short shorts, thin as a piece of printer paper. Manicured mutton chops angled across his cheekbones beneath a mop of wavy brown hair. He looked like an extra from Dazed and Confused. That tracks. That tracked for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ugh.
I felt that one.
Yeah. He comes in yelling, "What's up?" as too many people were in the early aughts. I do remember that being a thing,
Oh, gosh, I do remember
unfortunately.
that. Yeah, I remember
And
that.
he's high-fiving everyone, and all the workers stop what they're doing and they cheer when he enters. And Kate's just like, "Wow, yes, where am I? This is amazing." Ivy tells her Dove rides the city buses early in the morning and finds his workers on the way to their awful sweatshop jobs in the garment district, and he brings them here instead. How many CEOs do that? Dove cares about all of us like that. We're a family.
Oof.
I know. That's a red flag. That is a red
Big
flag.
red
I
flag,
know.
big red flag. Every job I've ever had where I was hired and during the interview they said something to the effect of we're like a family, it ended up being like a family that takes advantage of you and like abuses you.
Translation, you will be asked to do things way above your pay grade for no money
Mhm.
because we're a family and that's what families do. That's a
Yep.
toxic family relationship.
Really is.
Ugh. Okay, so Ivy continues. We work together for a common goal to make the world a better place. This is a revolution, and not just a revolution in manufacturing, but a fashion revolution, a sex revolution, a revolution in advertising, industrialization, globalization. Seems Interesting, to say the least.
See, I know now with the age and experience that I have that that's a pitch. It's too well crafted to not be a pitch, especially coming from Ivy, who I don't know how old she was, but I assume she was, early 20s, something like that.
Yeah.
But I could see being completely drawn in when you're young and you have no experience, and maybe you've never even had it. She's maybe had one other job or interview before for Urban Outfitters, which clearly was like a stark contrast to
Yeah.
what was being sold to her.
Right.
So I can see falling for it. I really can.
Yeah, and she's at this place where, like, the workers are literally cheering for the CEO.
Yeah.
That doesn't
Yeah.
seem like a bad place to be.
Mm-mm.
Later, she'll learn about a story that came out about Dove in an issue of Jane magazine, where the reporter detailed Dove asking if he could and then actually masturbating in front of her. The American Apparel girls are so quick to defend him, telling Kate that the reporter was an opportunist and that basically she took advantage of Dove. This is the first ping that Kate feels,
Mhm.
writing, I tried to reason with the uneasy voice in my head. Dove was just being honest about sex, wasn't he? Wasn't that so much better than being some secret, masturbating creep in the shadows? Here, the wolf wasn't wearing sheep's clothing. He was completely naked. And naked honesty was what the sex positive revolution of the new millennium was all about, right? The sexual liberation of Gloria Steinem's era of feminism had turned into the sex positivity of ours. The birth control and mini skirts replaced with celebrity sex tapes and Playboy spreads. In this new era, a woman could own her sexual appetite, make her own decisions. How do you feel about all that?
I asked myself when I was listening, I'm like, would this be the point where I would walk away? Like, actually, I asked myself throughout the whole book, okay, is this when I would walk away? What would I have done? I could see if you knew nothing else about him other than that he was apparently this man who his employees applauded for when they walked in the room. And all you'd heard about was this concept of him being so ethical. And yeah, I could buy into this idea of, well, maybe he just had, this private event with this reporter who was just looking for a good story, salacious something or other. And I could buy into that probably, knowing nothing else.
Yeah, this is very early on when she starts working for the company.
Hmm.
I think I struggle with the brand of feminism that she is subscribing to.
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of feminist gatekeepers out there, and a lot of people are like, this is how you good feminist, and this is how you good feminist. But I've always struggled with when other people make money off of a woman and her body
Hmm.
and trying to justify that with feminism.
Yeah.
Maybe if Playboy wasn't run by Hugh Hefner and was run by a woman, I would feel different. Maybe if Dove were a woman, I would have felt different.
Yes. Yes.
But at the end of the day, the men are making the money.
Mhm. And it's like, what does the woman ever really have the power? So long as the man is the one making the money, even if the woman says or claims that she wants to do whatever she's going to do, is she really in power? Is she really in control? Like when she's under somebody's thumb, that's how she needs to make her living, pay her rent.
Exactly, exactly. We'll keep coming back to this for sure. So Ivy has placed Kate at the retail store in Echo Park. And at first, Kate protests because she's like, I have a degree. But Ivy says only hard work will move her up in the ranks at American Apparel, not, quote, a piece of paper her parents paid for. Which, ouch,
Ooh.
ouch.
Yeah, that was a burn.
Okay, so Kate starts working at the Echo Park retail store. She meets the two other young women who work there. They're just a year or so younger than her, but she writes, they regarded me like a wise old sage, listening intently to my advice on everything. They were resolutely uninterested in politics, having only a rudimentary understanding of current events and even basic geography. At least one asked me if Canada was next to France. I was finding them so refreshing after my aggressively intellectual college experience. Sometimes it just felt good to be young and dumb with the girls. I wanted to include this part because I'm not casting judgment on any of the young women who got manipulated by this man, Dove. I do feel like at the end of the day, he was enemy number one. I think there was a little bit of girl on girl crime throughout the book as well.
Yeah, yeah.
But it just goes to show that when you don't have the desire to think critically, you're going to find yourself in situations that ultimately I think will not be the best for you.
Right. It's like you have to really be on your guard, especially in LA. I mean, especially when you're in a culture that is so sex focused, appearance focused, people are going to try to take advantage.
LA in particular, everybody's trying to find that easy mark.
Yeah, I would agree. That's how it felt to me
Yeah.
too. The girls that she recruits, I mean, in many ways were like her because she fell for it too, really, ultimately.
She calls these girls young and dumb, yet in the end, Kate's
Has done the
right
same
there with
thing.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like a false sense of entitlement makes us feel like we would never be taken advantage of.
Mhm.
But I do appreciate that Kate was so open and vulnerable in this memoir. Like, this doesn't make her look
Good.
necessarily like a very good person.
No, it doesn't. She's really honest.
I think she kind of writes this memoir to say, look, I came from a feminist intellectual education. I thought I was coming to LA with all of these really solidified values and beliefs. And even I was able to be taken for this ride.
Yeah, I really appreciated that, and to me, it kinda came back to her dedication. I don't know if her sister is younger than her, but she said that the book was written for her sister, and so in my mind, I imagine that might be a younger sister, and I know reading this, I thought about my daughter a lot of like, "Oh, these are some things that I need to work on before she goes off on her own," like, helping her understand you need to know who you are and have good boundaries around what you're comfortable with, what you're not, what you wanna give away.
Yeah, I do think too, at this cusp of when she was coming to LA, there was such a cultural push for women owning their sexual appetite as if that were the only way forward. And
Mhm.
I think she got caught up a lot in that too, of what it meant to be a good feminist at that time.
Right. It seems like she was sort of in the same way that any young person, the first time out of the house, I know I experienced this, maybe tests whatever value system they were taught growing up. It's kind of like she was testing this value system of Bryn Mawr, of, the staunch feminist ideals that she was taught, and saying, well, let me test the waters on that. Let me test the boundaries of that. And
And that's good. I think we should always
yeah,
be challenging and testing the things that we learn, but I think it's actually more naive to assume that you're not naive,
right. Right.
you know?
Yeah.
So maybe just go through life being like, "Maybe I'm being naive about this, but let
Yeah.
me, like, do some due diligence here,"
Right,
as
right.
opposed to being like, "You know what? I got this because I know who
Yeah.
I am."
Right, yeah.
'Cause until we're tested, we never really know what we're capable of, good or bad.
So true. My hope for my own daughter is that at some point when she goes through these experiences, because I'm not naive and knowing that at some point she will, she just finds the boundary a little earlier than the next person. Maybe she, sets it a little bit tighter, finds it a little bit sooner so that she doesn't get too much harm done to herself.
Yeah, I think really empowering our daughters with the word no. And I actually had this conversation with my dad recently because my little sister she's going to be finishing high school soon and
Oh
going
my
off
gosh.
into college and the real world. And I told my dad, I said, girls are conditioned to be nice.
Yes. Yes. Especially Southern girls like us. There's like that sort of polite Southern culture.
Let me make myself uncomfortable so you're not
Mhm.
uncomfortable.
Right.
Can we
Yeah.
that's what we need to get rid of.
My safety is more important than hurting your feelings or being perceived as like impolite.
I am worth more than you in
Mhm.
my own
Yeah.
personal, and I think that's really what Kate where she really starts walking that fine line because I think she put the company's worth and Dove's worth above herself.
Yeah.
And I think she was being conditioned to do that for sure because she was
Absolutely. Yeah.
surrounding herself only by these other girls who were basically parroting everything that Dove said.
Yeah, and that's where I think this idea of it, this comparison to like a cult comes in. It's very hard when you don't have a strong sense of yourself and then you're in an environment where there's a strong element of like group think, like where everybody's thinking and believing and doing the same things to like detach yourself from that, especially when like your livelihood is tied in with it.
Completely, and she talks about how lonely she was when she moved to LA, and she
Yes.
finally found her people. I mean, it's not just quitting her job and not knowing where the next paycheck's coming from. It's getting rid of all of her friends, her only support group.
Yeah, she would have had to start like from the ground up. I mean, it would have been totally tearing her whole life that she built down.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, which
yeah.
we'll get there. Okay, so we're just talking about this a lot, but Kate writes a lot about the juxtaposition of her Bryn Mawr experience and working for American Apparel. And I found that this constant battle within her so interesting because I've actually personally never been taught to be a feminist explicitly. You
Mhm.
know, like my mom never sat me
Yeah.
down and no one really ever sat me
No.
down and said, this is what it looks like. But it seems like from her experience, either via the institution itself or the women and educators that she surrounded herself with, This conflict is
Right.
very real for her, and it makes me reflect on our gatekeeping culture, as I said earlier, the idea that there is only one way to be a feminist, not doing this, doing that. What does feminism mean to you?
Ooh, heavy
I
question.
know. Sorry.
That's a toughie. So this is on my mind a lot, actually, and partially because I'm in a career that is so female dominated. I mean, speech pathologists were like 95% female, which you would think that you wouldn't necessarily have to consider feminist issues if you're just around other women all the time. And yet we're so impacted by it because through the influence of like the patriarchy and what the value traditionally has been on like a pink collar career, like teachers, nurses, speech pathologists, we are just horrifically underpaid for the amount of, work that we do, the level of education required, ongoing continuing education required. What I have come to decide about feminism is I think it's about like putting women first, essentially, or at least side by side with men in society, giving us and what the typical types of issues, needs equal value and our talents equal value. Why should a childcare worker make $10 an hour when they're raising the children of the future, during probably some of the most critical time periods of their lives? Kind of tying that back to the book, I guess, just making sure that the woman's experience is prioritized as much as the man's, and whether it be in a professional dynamic or a relationship dynamic, which to me, in this book, it seemed more like the women were used, I mean, as pawns, truly.
1,000%.
They were given very, very little value when you look, when you get into the nitty gritty and actually see what was happening
They were
behind the scenes.
given little value, but told they had more value than was actually being reflected in the way that they were being
Right.
supported, financially
Yeah.
compensated, all of the
Hmm.
above. Completely agree with you. A lot of people took issue with Barbie because they felt like, but what about the men? Well, it's like, but it's been about the man for the
Yeah.
entirety of civilization. So
Right.
like the
Right.
pendulum's got to swing a little bit.
Yeah.
I would love to live in a world where there was a female president, where there were more females in the C suites, as they say, where there were more female
Yeah.
Supreme Court justices, because our needs are not being reflected. They're not being
No.
supported because the people
Right.
making the decisions are not women.
No, and they're prioritizing the male
Exactly.
experience. You think about lack of federal family leave, the outrageous cost of having a baby in this country. I mean, childcare, the cost of childcare, like everything is basically set up to drive a woman out of work because it's so expensive, or to prevent, which we actually know there's like a major national fertility crisis. Fertility meaning, that births are just going down because, yeah, I just think people can't afford it. Women can't afford it. And I think more so, increasingly, women are less willing to make those kinds of sacrifices.
Yeah, because they're like, wait, what's in it for us again?
Right.
Unconditional love for my child. That's wonderful. And you and I have children
Yeah.
and we love them, but like,
Right. Have
yeah,
to eat.
yeah, there are other things that you have to do in order to not just survive your life, but live your life.
Right.
I think too, there's an aspect of feminism that is about individual choice. True
Hmm.
feminism is a woman doing whatever is best for her in her current
Yes.
situation
Yes.
and not projecting onto other women.
Yeah, totally. Tying that in with like, there's always this ongoing battle of stay at home moms, working moms. Which one is, it's whatever works for the woman, and she should be empowered to do whichever one is going to be best for her. But like, to me, that also includes, okay, if a woman is going to stay home with her child, how is she going to be financially like cared for and compensated? Like, there has to be some sort of, because for so many years, like, I know many of my mom's friends have gotten divorced over the years and they were stay at home moms, and if, there wasn't a ton of money in the divorce settlement, they're going back to work in their 60s. It's like there was no financial security available to them. And that is just horrendous.
That is horrendous, especially when so many articles now have come out about if women or the stay-at-home caregivers were actually being paid a reasonable wage, what that would equate to, and it's six figures.
Right.
Alex here, popping in with this really interesting article from April of 2024 at Forbes.com. I'll link it in the show notes. A new study by Bike Biotechnology shows that labor would cost between $4,000 and $5,200 per month to outsource in a handful of American cities. They did a study of 80 major cities around the world and analyzed the child care tasks taken on by the stay-at-home parents of 1 to 4 children and researched how much it would cost to outsource those tasks in each city. The value of the parental workload workload was found by analyzing 8 common chores: cleaning, cooking, shopping, laundry, transportation, emotional support, tutoring, and planning/administrative tasks, and averaging how many hours parents spent on those tasks based on the number of children they have. An average parent of 2 children, for example, spends 19.9 hours cleaning per month, 23.7 hours cooking, 16.8 hours transporting children, and 22.9 hours planning, scheduling, arranging activities, or doing other household administration tasks. They determined that it would cost $1 million on average to outsource the work of a stay-at-home parent of 2 over the course of the 20 years it takes to raise those children in 6 American cities that they studied: San Francisco, New York City, Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, Houston, and Chicago. Okay, back to Kate.
For the number of things women do to take care of the home, they're the CEOs of the home quite often. So without women, we're in trouble.
I agree, and without supporting women. And it's interesting to me how
Mhm.
there are those in politics who claim to be pro-life, but then when it comes to actually supporting the lives that raise the lives or supporting even the young lives themselves, I mean, some of these same people are taking free school lunches out of school. And it's just
Yeah.
it's like, let me stop and think about how these two things correlate.
Yeah.
Man, we could just keep talking about this, but let's
We
let's
could.
get back to Kate's journey. So her boss is impressed by her work ethic at the retail store, commenting that she thought Kate was just another Dove girl. Other huge red flag. We
Oh.
learn about Natalie, the first Dove girl who dated Dove, and then apparently, according to this is all hearsay, right? We never hear from Natalie.
Mhm.
She got too into the party scene, but Dove took care of her, sending her to rehab and gifting her puppies to help her stay sober. Her manager even tells Kate that Dove helped her financially too, even though she's not a Dove girl, and he paid for her braces and helps her with, take care of her kid. And it's interesting. Kate is really intrigued by this
Very
notion
interesting.
of being a Dove girl, one of the
Mhm.
chosen ones, while simultaneously judging them once she rises up in the ranks, writing that she didn't need to sleep with Dove to move up in the company. But then she's feeling bad for that judgment because why shouldn't women use their sexuality to get free trips or advance? I mean, that's how I feel like I was Kate right there. I'd
Yeah.
be like, yeah, I wouldn't have to sleep with a guy to get ahead. But then I'm like, but girl, you do you. If sleeping with him gets you ahead, like, I mean, but the question is, what does ahead mean? Because
Right.
there's still a complete disproportionate amount of power happening.
Mhm.
Dove being the
Mhm.
only one who has the power.
Yeah. The real answer is neither of you are winning.
Yeah.
And really, I mean, she may not sleep with him, but arguably her sexuality plays into her getting her role at the company. It's like it's hard to ever completely divorce yourself from it when the person who is in charge sets that as the bar. I mean, if you have to be this sexual, beautiful girl, then that's the job you have to do.
You're exactly right. There was a reason why Ivy approached her at the bar, and it wasn't just because Kate was by herself. I do think that was a part of it, but it was because of the way Kate looked as well. Even though
Yeah. Yeah.
technically she's not quite Dove's aesthetic because he doesn't ever try a sexual advance on her. Okay, so at this point in the book, I already have the ick. You've had like we're having the ick, right?
Yeah, we've got the ick.
Plus, we both went into this book knowing about Dove and the sexual assault allegations.
Yeah.
I side with the women,
Yeah. Same.
There are numerous parts in the book where Kate is being taken advantage of, exploited. We're going to get into those. First, on her initial tour with Ivy, she's wearing this vintage 70s floppy hat that she had gotten from her mom. And Ivy asks her for it, saying that it would be perfect for the line. And Kate doesn't get it back that day. And eventually she gets it back in the mail and it's been completely cut up because they basically cut it into pieces to be able to make a pattern from it. And Kate is definitely disappointed, but you can tell she's already bought into the company so quickly because she's excited that her mom's hat, this hat that meant so much to her and is now trash basically, is going to be a part of this ethical fashion line, right? But that
Mhm.
that bummed me out. Like if something
Oh
from my
gosh, I
mom's
know.
had been cut up, something that meant so much to me that I wore it to a job interview that I was hoping to
Right.
get. I mean, that's like a good luck charm
Yeah.
too.
It kind of felt like she took her little core memory with her to this interview and then they just ripped it apart. We're like, yep, whoever you thought you were, we're gonna go ahead and tear that apart and then just
Well, isn't that a metaphor? Oh my God. You're right.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And girl, that floppy hat was cute.
I know.
There's a point where she's basically in a commercial for American Apparel. One of the girls had been filming them goofing off and dancing around to a song, and it goes viral. And she's bragging to her roommate, and he's like, "Well, how much did you get paid for this?" And she's like, "Well, I mean, I was making 10.50 an hour." And he's like, "That's it?" So they're using your image without permission and didn't even pay you. They're ripping you off. And but
Mhm.
Kate's like, "No, no, because it's for the company." Another time, she writes about a fellow American Apparel girl, Gia, who tells her a story of being photographed completely nude when she was barely legal by photographer Larry Clark for the 2005 Supreme calendar. Larry then went on to sell all the shots that he had taken of Gia, not the ones included in the calendar, for $100 a pop. And Kate was like, "What did you do about that?" And Gia's like, "Well, I bought one." I was really it bummed me out.
That was so depressing. What I kept coming back to, and you might know more about this than I do, but how are there not laws in place that govern like distribution of nudity of a person's body that requires some kind of like contractual agreement?
I'm sure she signed something giving up her rights.
But like, do you know what I'm saying? Did she sign something like at the beginning of her experience as an American Apparel quote unquote spokesmodel? And then that just gives you carte blanche? Like, how do we not have like a requirement that like every incidence of nudity requires its separate contact or something? You know, it's like that just seems crazy the amount of leeway that these companies have to just take your body and use it how they want to.
Well, girl, this is a tale as old as time. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but the images of Marilyn Monroe in, I believe, the very first issue of Playboy were completely taken without her
Oh,
permission.
oh, that's terrible.
She had posed nude for a calendar shoot, and Hugh Hefner bought the negatives from that photographer without Marilyn's permission and used them, put
Mm,
them in to use to sell his
wow.
magazine. Yeah. And then now he's buried next to her.
Wow, terrible.
I know, it's disgusting.
Oh, that gives me the ick.
But yeah, that's a really good question. Kate never brings up signing any sort of release, photographic release, but I think that is just part of because that's what
Right,
Ivy says, right? When she first brings her into the fold, she says, "We're not just models," but that is part of it.
right.
So life at American Apparel is one constant party, and Kate starts rising through the ranks very quickly, but she's determined to do it, quote, "the right way." "I would work the hardest and be the sexiest one who would never have sex with Dove." So it comes back again. This is like the line that she will not
Mhm.
cross, but like that's a pretty high up line, you know? Like
Right.
that's a far line. Like you still walked
Yeah.
pretty deep into the forest, Kate. So she has an eye for the kind of girl that Dove likes.
Ooh, ooh.
I know. Cute, but she's not trying too hard. She's not a beauty queen, but she's definitely hot. She's fuckable. That's Dove explicitly explaining to her.
Yeah, that language.
And Kate can convince these people and recruit them to work for American Apparel. And so that's exactly what Dove tasks her with doing, going to the new store locations, like you said, and finding the workers. She's sent to different cities all over the country, but not the world, because Ivy and the other girls who did sleep with Dove get to go to like the French, the
Yes.
exotic places.
The exotic places.
I thought this was nuts.
She gets to go to where did you go?
She goes to
She's
like
like,
New Haven,
yeah.
Arizona. No hate on New Haven or Arizona, but not
Sure.
quite
Yeah.
Paris, She's given a Nextel phone.
Oh my gosh.
And at one point, she comes out of the shower to 23 missed calls and the phone's still ringing because Dove will not stop calling her until she answers.
Not okay.
She's not getting paid.
10 10 50 an hour? Are we still at 10 50 an hour at this
Yes.
point? I think she is. Oh my
I
gosh.
know, I know, but she prides herself on rising up to meet this grueling work ethic that Dove demands, right?
Mhm.
And I think that's also
Yeah.
where, as women, as Americans, we are taught that if you work the hardest, you
Mhm.
show up before everyone and leave after everyone, then like
Right. You'll be rewarded in theory.
in theory, exactly. In theory. I mean, Kate, she's bought it, right? Oh,
Yeah.
no, Siri, go away. That was funny. I didn't get that. Yeah, we don't get it either, Siri, as I'm trying to tell you. Um,
We don't get it, Siri.
so she's
Ah,
completely immersed in this company and this world. Like I said earlier, the only friends and the only people she knows are American Apparel people. She writes about how
yeah.
one time she was having sex with this guy that she's recruited to work at American Apparel because a coworker told her it was better to keep it in the family. Ah,
Ooh.
do not have sex with people in your family. Like, what?
No,
Bad
bad
idea.
idea.
Um, Illegal in some states? Not all,
Yeah,
though, oddly enough.
morally questionable.
So she's having sex with this guy and he like stops having sex with her. I don't know. The way that I read it, it was like almost like a movie moment where he like pulls back and he's like,
Yeah.
can't believe that I'm having sex with someone that I feel like I have no business having sex with. And he clarifies to say, I mean, an American Apparel girl. And Kate writes, it was the highest form of compliment. I gave him a long, sexy kiss. The past 6 months I'd been with the company, I'd always felt this big divide stretching out between the girl I thought I was and the woman I wanted to be. But William, the guy, hadn't been able to tell the difference. The two were beginning to merge into the same person. When we were finally through, I slept soundly, like I had exorcised a terrible demon and could start the rest of my life now.
I feel like she kept coming back to this, well, I'm not a Dove girl. I'm not a Dove girl.
But I want to be an American Apparel girl.
Right. But I'm still seeking that validation. Like, I need that validation. That was a sad moment for me, I think. In that way, as well as just thinking of, well, you may not be a Dove girl, but now you're doing what Dove does. Like, you're sleeping with your employee. You're using your power. So, ooh.
You know, it's so interesting. In Tara Westover's memoir, Educated, which we discussed last month, she writes about letting somebody else define her worth.
And I feel like that's very much what's going on here. She's letting
Yeah.
Dove, maybe even just the idea of what American Apparel is or is supposed to be, define her worth.
And I think what you were saying about, that this company is really her whole world, like it's become too narrow. Like she can't see outside of it anymore. And so it's the only way she can find value at this point because she doesn't have, and actually, well, we'll probably get to this, but then if she eventually like has to take a moment and go leave and visit family, and like that's basically when she starts having a little bit of room to think.
Yeah, she actually says that that gives her room to think. I mean, you're exactly right. She
Mhm.
does have this roommate at the beginning who is constantly kind
Oh
of pushing
yeah.
back, but then eventually she's like, this guy's annoying. I'm going to live by myself, right? Like she removes herself from any conflict.
Which that is like very much like being in a cult. I mean, she starts like removing outside influence. It's
I think it's really important to have your beliefs challenged. It's okay to change your mind on things. Sometimes it's okay to pause and reflect and ask yourself, okay, what's really going on here? Is this really what I want? Is this really how I want to live my life? That can be a really scary thing to do because then you have to change. And in Kate's case, I mean, like we said earlier, she would have had to start again at zero. And financially, it just was pretty impossible for her to do as well.
right.
So it's definitely the path of least resistance. It's easier,
Mhm.
just keep going
Yeah.
forward, just keep doing these morally questionable things while this voice inside your head is saying, hold up, wait a second, this isn't who we are. And you go, no, no, it's fine because American Apparel is a great company that is all about revolutionizing everything. It's so easy to fall back on this wonderful mission statement.
Yeah. Yeah. Fall back into that pitch.
She writes, unprofessionalism was the name of the game at the company, and I always thought that was our greatest strength. But Dove was just using us too, wasn't he? I had been convinced that we were a company run by women, but it was starting to seem like we were actually a giant human pyramid set up to support the brunt of one man. There was nothing feminist about that, nothing empowering. It was the oldest trick in the book. Dove had built his entire empire on the backs of women, and to make matters worse, sometimes they were on their backs, literally. She's starting to see the forest from the trees. But again, she's so pot committed at this point.
Right.
And she is trying, like she tried to get a modeling agent. She tried to give herself this other stream of revenue. And then it turned out to be just the same old shit.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell? She often writes about the Bryn Mawr voice inside her head. The alarm bells ringing. I've mentioned it a couple of times already. It's saying, hey, you learned what feminism is and looks like, and you thought that you're being told something, but is that really what you think it is? And she keeps pushing it away. It is now fall of 2005, and 3 former American Apparel workers have filed sexual harassment lawsuits against Dove. She writes, one plaintiff said Dove paraded around in his American Apparel briefs at the store and invited her to masturbate with him. The girls had been damaged by Dove's egregious expressions of sexual freedom, and now they wanted to be compensated. Kate's like, this does sound like sexual harassment. But Dove is very quick to lean into the us versus them dynamic. He tells them all, quote, "We're changing culture here and it's big work. There are puritanical forces set to destroy everything we've built so far. Don't let them." And this guy, he is a freaking zinger. Puritanical
Yeah.
forces, tribalism. Like, he uses these words that, honestly, if this girl doesn't know where that Canada is not next to France, does she know what puritanical forces are? And there's no judgment
No,
there, but like,
it just sounds intellectual, so
yeah,
it, like, serves to,
it serves its purpose, right?
hypnotize a little bit,
Yeah,
yeah.
and he's so charismatic and it's so easy to get caught up in his energy. Kate reflects on this, writing, "How did I get so hypnotized? How did I get to a place where I was actually applauding a man with multiple sexual harassment lawsuits pending against him? How did I find myself on the opposing side of Gloria Allred, the most famous feminist attorney of all time? It had all happened so quickly. I hadn't realized how deep I was falling, but that's what hypnotists do. They disconnect you from your own self-conscious, weakening the connections between you and the outside world you've always known. They make you do things you would never consider in real life."
Yeah. Is he wearing the pink underwear at this point, like, during that speech? Isn't that when he, like, rips off his pants and he's just, like, in pink underwear or something?
Oh, maybe.
I can't remember if that's at this point, but that was the moment where I was like, "Okay, if she's not, like, kinda holding back vomit at this point in the book, like, I don't know how to help her."
She is straight up hypnotized.
This guy, rather than try to kind of put a lid on it, like, "Okay, this needs to stop here. I'm gonna change some things so that, like, we can keep this company afloat." He doubles down.
Wow, he's a narcissist, don't you think?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, and hindsight is always 2020. Kate is
Yep.
still sucked in. Dove buys a house at this point that they call the big house, and it's like this crazy, like, concrete built into the side of a hill thing. Like, it really
Yeah.
feels like a place that they're going to, like, shelter themselves in from the storm. And a bunch of the girls move in, and while at first Kate feels part of the chosen few to be invited to the parties at the big house, as she watches what goes on, the girls waiting their turn to be shot by Dove in their most intimate moments, growing catty and jealous with one another over his attention and favor, she sees it for what it is, quote, "piggy patriarchal role play." Love that phrase.
Yeah, that was great.
I kind of feel like some of these girls were in love with Dove, at the very least the idea of
Oh,
Dove.
yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like what drives you in that situation is probably the fantasy of, like, he's gonna pick me.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be the one. I'm gonna marry him and have all his money and,
Rule the kingdom
all the
together.
yeah, exactly.
But Kate she's feeling all sorts of mixed up about the message and the culture of American Apparel and how they're at odds. She writes, "The world wanted to know if an ethical business could be run by an unethical man." That definitely was the question. Self.
A little later, she goes on vacation with her family, like you had mentioned earlier, Kate.
And she's sharing her experiences with her family. And I think she's really looking for them to tell her, "You got to get out of this situation." But instead, her sister is like, "It sounds like Dove has this kind of personality disorder that a lot of successful CEOs have. It's called hyperthymic temperament. It includes abnormally high levels of energy, extreme extroversion and self confidence, chronic risk taking, lack of inhibitions, and increased libido."
And I'm going to include an article about hyperthymic temperament in the show notes so that everyone can learn more.
This hits Kate like a lightning bolt, and she realized Dove isn't a maverick. He's pathological.
Yeah.
A very important distinction to make. But her mom tells her basically just to keep her head down and keep working.
Yeah.
So she's not even getting really a lot of pushback. Her sister's just like, "Yeah, he sounds, pathological." And her mom's like, "But you got to keep working for him."
And I think probably, I mean, I assume she wasn't really probably able to convey the full extent. Like, sometimes that can be really hard to articulate to people, like, why you feel powerless or why you feel, because it's not just like one moment. It's a whole cumulative, buildup of different interactions and expectations and things that happen. So had they truly understood like what the environment was like, I wonder if, they really would have said the same. I'd like to think any mother would have said, "Get out of there."
Totally. And Kate also didn't really have time to convey that because very quickly she's called away out of her vacation.
That little Nextel
That Nextel chirped.
chirping off the
Yeah,
hook.
Ivy's like, "Get down to Miami. Thanks. Bye." And Kate's like, "But I'm on vacation." Click.
Yeah.
So she goes down to Miami because she's the good little worker bee.
Hmm.
And when she gets there, Dove is having a temper tantrum and also obsessing over a high school senior.
Oh gosh. Yeah. Wow.
So gross. That was really, that was
That was gross.
hard to read. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kate writes, it was all so pitiful. All his power and mythos instantly evaporate. The curtain has been pulled back, and despite all the fuss, there was still a child under there. Are all powerful men just little boys finally being able to attain with money and power what was never in their grasp?
Yeah. I hope not for the sake of the world.
Yeah. So in Miami, it gets really bad. This is where Dove puts her on salary, which you had stated earlier was about $30,000 a year. This has got to be around 2005, 2006, because it's right after the sexual assault allegations.
Which I will tell you, I made $30,000. That was my salary coming out of college. And so it was probably like a little bit different from inflation, but that was not a lot of money.
No.
It was not a lot.
In LA? No.
No, I was still getting hefty help from my parents with $30,000 in LA.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I still just, I don't, and I would like to see her like do a little budget worksheet
Yeah.
for us and show us exactly how these numbers all worked out because it's not adding up for me.
Show
But
us your Excel spreadsheet, Kate.
regardless, point being, like she's still completely being undervalued and underpaid.
Completely. But don't you think this was probably part of his tactic? I mean, to have
Oh,
these women be
absolutely.
financially.
Yeah, he wants them on the dole. Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. She has, and at this point, when she's in Miami, there's all these like American Apparel apartments at all these different various places. And
Yeah.
there's usually a women's apartment and a men's apartment. And I guess Kate, sort of like one of the girls at the women's apartment, had beef with her and said there wasn't room for her or something. It was weird. So she has to stay at the men's apartment. And at this apartment is this guy, Victor, whom Kate had sex with earlier, but he went camping with them. And there was a really weird thing where he tried to like run into their tent. She no longer wanted to be involved with this guy at all,
Right.
sexually,
Right.
romantically, at all. And the other person was one of the higher up, this woman, Roz, who's like the head designer, her brother. And both of these guys did not have good reputations. So she's like, I have to stay at this apartment with them. And one night in Miami, Victor attempts to rape her. She wakes up with him on top of her. And when she tries to leave, he blocks her way, getting even more physical with her, yelling at her. She's able to punch him in the balls when the other guy, Ian, kind of is knocking on the door, being like, hey, let her out, dude. And she's able to escape, but she's angry and scared and upset. And she writes, why had I decided to sleep in an apartment with the two of them? It was a red flag anyone else would have spotted a mile away. I'd become so blinded by trying to make things easy for the company. I had forgotten the very basics of protecting myself. And I think this kind of goes hand in hand with what you and I had talked about earlier, where sometimes as women, we do these things because we're like trying to be nice or trying to be good for the company. But that's a very traumatic experience and one that no woman deserves to have at any level, varying degree of that situation.
And this is where I really question Dove Charney, like as a businessman, because he has this setup with these company apartments, which I think that in and of itself is very interesting. Um, and then there is a men's and a women's, but there's nobody overseeing like that the men stay at the men's and the women stay at the women's. There weren't really any protections in place for her.
1,000%.
That whole setup is a disaster waiting to happen, and any reputable like HR office would have seen the disaster waiting to happen.
Oh, completely. But that's what American Apparel was all about. They broke the rules. They bent the
Exactly,
rules
yes.
because they were above the rules, because they were doing something different. And this situation only gets worse because she goes into work the next day and Dove is like, hey, I heard about what happened. Like, so sorry about that. He says, let me give you some advice. Quote, when HR calls, tell them to fuck right off. You tell them you can handle this yourself. Don't give into victim culture. You're better than that. You're stronger. You need to act like a man about this. This wouldn't have happened to a man, a voice in my head said, the Bryn Mawr voice.
It seems like he just doesn't really
Care.
maybe wasn't really capable of like critically thinking through the situation. He just kind of reacts emotionally. And like, I think emotionally in that moment, he was probably just like, oh my gosh, like the heat's already on me. I can't have any more. I need to put it under the rug, like push this under the rug.
Yeah.
And Kate along with
Yeah,
it.
and Kate along with it. She asks if Victor is going to be able to continue working for American Apparel and kind of like evades the question, basically, once again, just telling her to be an example of strength for the other girls. He wears her down. And honestly, she does want the entire night to disappear. She doesn't want to talk about it again. She doesn't want other people to come up to her, giving her the pitying glances. Like, as well within her rights, I think if I were in her situation, like, I don't know what I would do because I would be feeling so many freaking ways about it. But I totally relate to when you have an uncomfortable experience, just wanting to kind of pretend like it never happened.
Yeah.
None of it was her fault. But in the end, she's the one who's made to feel shamed about it and embarrassed.
Yeah. And the fact that he keeps this guy on, doesn't fire him, some random retail employee who the guy could go find another job. Like he doesn't even have to fire him for cause. Like he could just probably have had a conversation with the guy and say, look, I know this happened.
Bye.
Get out. And like they'd find another retail employee the next day to work the same
It
job.
is so strange. You're right. It's not even like he's protecting somebody who's like an integral cog in the machine.
To me, it was he's protecting the behavior. He's like,
Yes.
well, I've done things like that. And so if he's wrong, then I'm wrong and I can't be wrong. So therefore, I'm not going to discipline this behavior.
Ding, ding, ding. I think you're exactly right. He gives her the rest of the day off out of the kindness of his heart. She takes the opportunity and actually jets back to LA. She still does fire off an email to HR, basically downplaying the entire thing and saying it's no big deal and that she just wants to move on from it. Even though she was afraid that leaving Miami would piss Dove off and get her fired, the letter to HR saved her job and she continues working for American Apparel in Los Angeles. I just kept waiting for her to pick herself.
Yeah. To get herself out.
She does at this point. I definitely will give her credit for this. She does look for other jobs. Like she is trying to actively get out. And American Apparel, it just has such a horrible reputation that it's completely soiled her name and nobody will touch her. She has no other choice but to continue and work for this company because there is no out for her.
Yeah.
I think it was all done by design by this man.
Mm-hmm.
She writes, I delayed my job search and kept on working at American Apparel. I told myself it would just be another 3 months, which quickly streamed into 6. Then another year went by and then another. I never attempted to leave again. That just reminds me of the tales that we tell ourselves to make us feel better about our circumstances when they feel out of our control to change.
Yeah.
I think we're all guilty of doing that.
Yeah.
It can be really hard to face the truth. And in her case, it really does feel just near impossible. It seems like she knew too much to like go back to the way that it was.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people probably find themselves stuck in jobs where they know that maybe the culture was not what they were promised, but you have to make that paycheck. What else are you going to do? She does eventually get out because she's actually let go in 2008. Ivy says bye. Ivy hired her and fired her. It's just so tricky, right? This time in our life, number one, but also like feeling like you have autonomy over yourself and you know who you are, but then like not really being in power, but then like maybe being manipulated to feel like you have more power than you do. And watching that power slowly get even further out of her grasp with, like you said, like the cost of travel being covered and him covering her rent. And like he was doing all of these things purposefully to keep these girls so entrenched in his spider's web that they were going to have to cut off an arm to get out.
Right.
No, not everybody's prepared to do that or can do that.
Yeah. And then it's like, if they do happen to do it, there's like 10 more lined up around the block for the spot.
Exactly. So this was the big question, right? When is it sexual empowerment versus sexual exploitation? And I think you answered it really well earlier, where you said that it's about, who's in power, who makes the money. And if that really is the answer, then it feels like there's a lot more sexual exploitation happening than sexual empowerment.
Yeah. Like, these conversations are so important for women to have. Like, this is what helps move us forward, like little by little, conversation by conversation, exchange of ideas. Like, we have to change the way that we view ourselves, our world, ourselves within our world.
Yeah. And I feel really grateful to Kate Flannery for writing this memoir. As we said earlier, like this wasn't a memoir that made her look like an empowered woman, but it's a wonderful cautionary tale of places that we can find ourselves in.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's our book. That's Striptease by Kate Flannery. Dove sucks. Goodbye.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kate, thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome.
I really loved our discussion. A lot of things to think about moving forward and how I want to be a woman in the world, how I want to raise a woman in the world, and how I want to support the other women in the world.
Yes. Yeah. I really feel like I'm walking away from this conversation with just like so much value, but also just so many more things to think about. Like,
that's all you can do is just keep reflecting, and that's how you grow, right?
Yeah.
Appreciate you so much. Everybody listening, thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you all have a wonderful week. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Babes in Bookland. To access the full version of this episode, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts or support us on Patreon. Visit babesinbookland.com for more information.